Today you see a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful knit dress that has so many beautiful details, a placket, a little elasticated feature at the waist that looks amazing on everyone, and the fabric, chef's kiss. Love the fabric. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and today I'm sharing a beautiful knit dress. If you've been watching my content pretty frequently, you might have seen that a few hours ago I posted something about this pattern that I'm going to share, or the fitting process. Very helpful and practical video. You'll get what I mean when you see about this dress and why I decided to tackle fitting totally separately. What I'm talking about is brand new from Love Notions, and it's called the Palma dress. And before I tell you about it, just remember that today is the last day of the Love Notions site-wide sale. If you use my code KarinaNeedles10, you get 45% off. When you go onto the website, you'll see a code there. That code will get you 40% off. So you get a little bit more if you use an ambassador code like mine. So if you'd like to support the work that I do here on YouTube, all the sewing content that you can watch without any cost, using my affiliate link is one way that you can do that. You don't pay anything extra. So thank you to all of you who have been purchasing and using my link. I'm super grateful. You still have plenty of hours to shop the sale and get your favorites. Now back to the Palma dress. This is brand new. It's a really beautiful dress for the holidays or for any day. It's a fit and flare dress for knit fabrics, and it's got lovely features. I mean, it's just a dress that cannot look awful because it's just super, super cute. Now it's a bodice. It's got a waistband and a skirt. This waistband has channels with elastic inside. There's an option that's a little narrower waistband or a wider waistband. The narrow waistband just has 3 channels with elastic there, no space between the elastic. And the wider one has space between each channel for the elastic to gather a space, you know. So you can choose either or. I've chosen the wider waistband, and then on top you have a bodice and then an A-line skirt. That A-line skirt can be either knee length or slightly longer midi. On the sides of the skirt, you can add inseam pockets if you like. And this bodice has a nice amount of ease here because it goes in with that elasticated feature on the waist. There's a placket in the middle with no buttons, but it opens up like that. So you get like a little V look right here, but it's not low. And then you have a beautiful banded collar that is amazing. So cute. Sleeves, lots of options for the sleeve. The most typical one is a slim long sleeve, nothing special there. That is what I'm doing. I'm making this a winter version. I want to wear a jacket on top, and I know the slim sleeve is the best one when you want to wear things on top because it just doesn't get in the way. But if you want to show off your sleeve and wear your dress just like that, you have one that's wider at the bottom, gathered into a cuff. I think that's beautiful. You can sew a short sleeve with a pleat here in the middle, flatter sleeve that's short. So lots of options there. There's no sleeveless option. I would have sewn one with sleeveless. I'm headed off to live in cold weather for a while. So I was just thinking winter dresses. I don't have many. I need one. So that's why I chose the slim long sleeve. Because the Palma dress is a brand new pattern at Love Notions, it's going to be 24% off through next Thursday, the 11th of December. Because the site-wide sale is still happening, until tonight, that's 40 or 45% off, depending what code you use. I think it would be easier and less confusing if you want to buy the Palma dress to just purchase it separately. The Palma dress is not 45% off, it's 24% off. It's a brand new pattern. Affiliate link as always in the description box and on the top of the comment section. If you use it, you don't pay anything extra. It just supports the work that I do here, and I receive a small commission back from Tammy. You need knit fabrics. Don't attempt this one with a woven. It's just not going to fit. The placket is just not going to work if you do it with a woven. It's all designed to be with fabric that stretches. Medium to heavy weight, at least 25% horizontally. Vertically, I would say you need at least 10% just for comfort. You don't need a lot, but if you have some, that's fine. And the recommended fabrics here are Ponte Roma, double knits, stretch velvet. I would use an athletic knit. If you had like a heavier cotton lycra, it might work. But then the skirt, because it's A-line, it might proof out a little bit. So that's your choice. I wouldn't make this with rayon spandex, modal spandex, bamboo spandex. The collar details would be very hard to get a really neat result with those types of fabrics. So my first choice would not be lightweight fabrics. Just stay away. Just keep them far away from you for this design and you'll be much happier. You need some fusible interfacing because the placket is interfaced, so is the collar. That's very important so that the dress looks really nice. Tricot knit interfacing that has some give is the best one. And then you need 3/8 of an inch elastic. You need around 3 times the measurement of your waist at least, and then you can adjust. Now for the sizing, extra small to 5X, regular bust and the full bust option. For Love Notions, you use the full bust option when you measure your high bust and your full bust and the difference is 4 inches or more. That's when you use the full bust option. In my case, I have a 3-inch difference, so I just stick with the regular bust option and that's fine. If I plot my measurements on the chart, I'm a size large, high bust 38. I have an extra inch there on the bust. I'm in between sizes for large and extra large, right in the middle, but the size large is fine. I'm still going to have plenty of ease. Around the bust, you're going to have about 7 inches of ease. If you're doing the full bust option, you're going to have a bit more. Now, the waist is supposed to be 0 because you're going to regulate that elastic to be nice around your waist. But if you look at the pattern piece, if you look at the shape before the elastic, there's a lot of ease. And then at the hips, about 8 to 10 inches. I had a whole process of fitting, sewing up a muslin with leftover pieces of Ponte Roma, and I have the whole process for you in the previous episode. I thought it was helpful to just film it on its own because you can use that process to fit other knit styles that have a bodice, a waistband and a skirt, because that was the whole thing. It's just a little bit different. So go ahead and look at that. I'm not going to repeat. Check out that video. Now what I'm going to say about the skirt is that I chose the knee length and I made it 1.5 inches longer. In spite of all the checks I did, I feel that the process for fitting was pretty easy. Maybe because I'm used to it, but maybe if you do it over and over, you'll get used to it as well and you'll get to a stage where this is just one extra thing that you need to do to get the best result possible. And I have a lot of respect for my fabric. I don't want to just use it up and waste it if something doesn't fit properly. So I definitely feel that all the process I did had a lot of value. Check out my beautiful Palma dress. I love the print. I hadn't shown it to you in the fitting video. I had it wrong sides out on purpose so that you couldn't see it. But it's so nice. It's like a snake print with a burgundy background. It's so pretty. There is my collar. Now, I think it was totally worth it for me to sew it by hand right here. I'm going to show you how I did that and why I didn't want any top stitching on my Ponte Roma. I really wanted that really clean look and I'm so, so happy. Yeah, I don't regret the 40 minutes it took me to hand sew that collar in there. Of course, it's just an option and one that I would take. And I have taken plenty of time. This is not a strange thing for me. Easy to sew placket right here. Very easy to do. Long sleeves. You know, my sleeves are nothing special because I want to wear a jacket on the top. But there are other beautiful sleeves if you want to. Short sleeves. This could be a summer dress. And I have a sneaky seam there that makes it look like there's a cuff. There is that seam. Let's forget about it. No one's going to know. I just really wanted the long sleeves and I ran out of fabric and I was able to get the little piece from another area of the fabric to sew on there. I'm not upset about that. And the other fabric saving thing I did was to do a center back seam on the skirt that no one's going to know. There is a waistband with all the casings. I have the wider waistband. I really like that. I think I wouldn't be happy with the narrower one, you know, so personal preference. But I like having elastic, a space, elastic, the space I think covers more area there. And for me, that equates to more comfort. And the athletic knit I chose to put on the inside, so soft and it feels amazing. That's how it looks like on the inside. Now I made all my marks to sew these channels on this side. You're also going to see how I did that. And yeah, I just wanted to show you the details before I show you the sewing. I sewed this like wovens, seams pressed open, everything like that. And the only seam I sewed only on the serger was the sleeve right here. Super easy sleeve insertion. I did do a machine hem here. I thought it was going to be discreet. Let's see this one on just on its own in its full glory. I don't need to style a dress. All I need to do is add some footwear and a bag and I'm set to go. I'm going to take this dress with me to the UK. It's going to be one of my winter dresses. And just imagine that with a big jacket on top, a scarf, my beanie, my gloves, all the things, and I'll be sweet. This is my beautiful new Palma dress from Love Notions. I made it as a winter version. This is that amazing Ponte Roma. I have a size large regular bust option. I have the knee length skirt, but made a little bit longer, 1.5 inches longer. And I made some bodice adjustments so that it actually fits the length of my waist and that the waistband in between the bodice and the skirt is correctly placed. I love the silhouette, it's so comfortable. The details that you'll see up closer later, the placket, the collar, so pretty. And of course the comfort around the waist is always the best thing with all that elastic there. I chose the wider waistband that has elastic, a little bit of space in between, elastic, a little bit of space. I have 3 elastic channels in here and some space in between. I really love the fit. I made adjustments to the bodice so that this middle of the waistband would be at my waist. It's exactly there and it's all even in the front and the back. I don't have pulling in the center, all of that, and all the fitting process was worth it for this beautiful fit. Check out this beautiful banded collar. It's got a little seam right here, so it's 2 front pieces, the inner, the outer, and then the back looks so pretty. Lies extremely flat, nice and curved, follow the shape, and then this V is finished with that super easy placket that's interfaced right here. Really good shoulder fit, sleeve fit. My sleeve is a little longer, 1.5 inches longer, and I have a sneaky little seam that looks like a cuff just because I didn't have enough fabric and it was the only way to get a beautiful long sleeve. Check out this gorgeous neckline, the placket, this banded collar. It's so nice, it fits amazingly. I love that discreet little V on the front. It's not too low, it's not too high, it's just very pretty. I finished the inside of my collar by hand because I didn't want any top stitching on my dress, and I'm so glad I did. I'm so happy with it. There are other sleeve options, but I've just chosen the slim long sleeve that's regular, so it's not going to be bulky under jackets. But there's many other beautiful sleeves you can sew, and this could even be for summer if you choose one of the. This is such a beautiful dress. I love this fabric so much. I've been holding it for maybe 2 or 3 years. Amazingly soft. I'm taking this on my trip. Imagine this with a sweater, with a big jacket and a scarf and gloves and beanie, all the things. My boots, it's going to be an amazing winter dress for me. So pretty. For sewing, I'm going to show you a fair bit. Seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch. You'll be using a lot of the sewing machine and the serger, of course, but a lot of the steps need the sewing machine, so don't forget about it. I'm going to show you about the collar. Now, asterisk, if you've sewn the Presto tunic and you've sewn that collar, it's the same. It's just that this is the knit fabrics, but the shape and the style of the collar is very similar. So that might seem familiar to you. I'm going to show you the placket, how to construct this waistband, and just general construction. You'll see it's not as hard as it looks at all. I think the only thing that takes a little bit longer is the time it takes to make the waistband, but it's not hard. It's a lot of sewing on the round. So let's see. Here are the pieces that need interfacing. This is the back collar and this is the front one. For the front, you need to cut 2 pairs mirrored. So I'm going to cut one first, then use the pattern piece to cut the other one. Block fusing, a little bit of extra fabric. This is already interfaced, so nothing changes, so that the fabric doesn't have the chance to shrink. It's already shrunk if it did. And when I cut it, it's going to turn out exactly the size and shape it's supposed to have originally. This is especially important with knit fabric. I find knit fabric reacts more to interfacing than woven fabric does sometimes. So I do it the same for knit and woven. These are most of the pattern pieces for the Palmer dress, at least for the bodice. This is the front. It's not cut on the forward and it's got this little shape right here. Very nice. This is the placket that's going to go sewn onto there. Now this placket is a rectangle. The only way that you can get away with doing a rectangle on this shape is because this is a knit. So if you just cut this on a woven and try to sew it, it would not work. Back is on the fold, collar pieces over there. I have the back piece and the 2 front pieces there already pinned together. And here are my sleeves. Now you see a sneaky seam here. I was basically going to end up with a 3/4 length sleeve. If I would have had this much more fabric, I would have had the long sleeves, and I just can't take no for an answer when I sew. I want the long sleeves. So I have a seam. I serged the edges, I pressed it, I sewed it flat, and then I get a sleeve that's long. Over here, it might look like the sleeve has a cuff, if you can tell. I think you can't tell. So let's forget that seam and pretend it's not there. Now I'm going to show you the waistband separately and how I marked on it. These are the two waistband pieces. It's just a long rectangle that's cut on the fold. The stretch of the fabric is going this way. And I've got one layer that's from the main fabric. I don't mind doing the inner layer with the same fabric. It's just that I didn't have enough to cut another layer. So my inner layer is going to be this black athletic knit. I'm not upset because this is a solid and it was easier for me to mark the lines. Now let me show you how I mark those lines. I just used the tracing paper, put the edge of the tracing paper against the edge of the fabric, put my pattern piece on top, and with a tracing wheel I went over all the lines. They're not perfect, but it gives me a good reference to be able to sew all of these little channels. This is my skirt. I didn't show you the pattern pieces because I just wanted to sew it up. It's so easy. It's just one piece that's cut on the fold. It's A-lined, as you can see. The same for the front and the back. The only thing is, mine is normal here on the front, but for the back, I have a sneaky seam. It was the only way I was going to get this dress out of the fabric I had. And I never mind doing a sneaky back seam. It's fine. I went right up to the selvage, which is a little different, but then this is fine. It's okay to have a center back seam, you know. So I have already serged the edges. I've pressed them, the seams open, sewn them with 3/8. I've even got the edges serged at the bottom. And now this is ready to be used later on. We're going to start with this placket. It's two rectangles. They're right sides together. And on the pattern, you have a line marked and these little marks. So I'm going to go ahead and reinforce right there and then sew down to the bottom. That's the first step. Going with the sewing machine for this dress, I'm doing a narrow zigzag. Now here's what we've sewn. Now all we do is open this up like this. So that's the seam we did. Now that's how it's going to be. So this is part of the neckline here. So I repeat, super easy. Just open it up, grab these, and then do that, and then press it. So that's how it looks like. Super duper easy. Wrong sides are touching right here and over here, and we have that seam, but then on the top it opens up. Here are the front bodice pieces. Let's just choose one. This is the same on both sides, so either or, choose one and align it right here. On the inside, you're going to have that little mark. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin on it because I can't see it anymore. That's the mark right there. And that's going to match that shape. I actually drew a little line there. I'm just going to match them up right there. So we're going to pin it right here to the bottom and then along this little shape there. This is what you wouldn't be able to do in a woven. If you wanted this detail in a woven, this would all have to be shaped to follow this. But with a knit, you can do it. Once I've got this one pinned, I'm going to sew it. It's just a little seam, 3/8 seam allowance. You need your sewing machine for this. There are plenty of steps where you need your sewing machine. You will need your serger as well, but for these steps, you can't just do this on the serger. It would not look great. Okay, that's one half done. That's how it's going to look. This is going to be part of where you sew the collar on later. That is super nice. And so now we just need to bring the other front and put it right here. This is the right side of this bodice. So now we take this side and put it right here on the top. I'm actually going to work with it with a placket on the top though. It's the most stable area. That's the one that's been interfaced. And so I'm just going to pin this in place and follow the same steps. It's important to always sew the most stable layer touching the presser foot. If I had the bodice on the top, the presser foot could make it stretch out as I sew. Now we're at the iron and we have it wrong sides up and we're going to give this a nice little press. Now, these edges here, we need to serge them. I mean, in essence, you could leave them raw. It's not going to fray, but it's going to look awful. So I'm going to go ahead and serge these. I've just done some regular, easy seams like the sides, and I'm pressing them open. I had already serged this, so narrow zigzag, pressed open, just like sewing wovens. And I've done the same thing for the shoulder seams right here. Just getting this out of the way so then I can focus on the collar. There's a little bodice done, shoulders, side seams, all 3/8, all pressed open. And now I'm going to lay this aside and start working on the collar. Okay, here is one of the collar layers. I've chosen this one to be on the inside. You just put your back right there and then your fronts should have this shape. Easy peasy. Seam sewn, pressed opened. It looks like that. So along the outer edge here, not the inner edge, we're going to do a guide stitch 1/4 inch so that we can press that up later. So I'm doing that with the sewing machine with a 1/4 inch presser foot, long stitch length. I have a pink thread on the bobbin so that I can see my guide stitch later, and it's going to help me press it up and see it. I'm going to head over and press this up, and it's going to be helpful for later. Okay, there's my inner layer with the outer edge folded in by 1/4 inch pressed. I also hand hemmed it, basted it just to keep it in place so it doesn't move at all. Now we're going to bring our neckline. This is the back. We're going to bring the one that's not interfaced right here, align it here, and then we flip it like this. So when you have the center backs pinned, all this is going to be hanging like that. But that's how it's supposed to be, and that's how you pin to the other side. So I've got my mark for the center back, and I'm going to pin it right here on the center back of the neckline. I'm going to pin that. Then I'm going to pin the shoulder seams of the collar with the shoulder seam. And then this little bit is the front. This goes over here, but you need to leave that hanging there. You need to leave an excess of seam allowance there so that you can sew it to the other layer of the collar. So you can see that hanging right there. And so now it's filling in the gap, pinning it all. Okay, everything's pinned. I know it looks super weird, but then once it's sewn, it's going to look like that and it's going to make total sense. Make sure these seams match. And now I'm going to keep using my 1/4 inch presser foot to sew this all the way around, being careful with all these curves. Now we head to the iron and we press the seam up. No need to snip. It's going to look super nice. Once all that's pressed, we're going to take this other layer that we'd prepped previously and put it right sides together with this collar right here. So all along here, like that. And then we're going to sew it all the way along the top. Okay, there it is sewn. That seam there is right against the placket. When we flip it to the other side, the collar is going to go right along there. Nice. So now we're going to snip into these curves. These ones you do need to snip because we're going to flip this collar to the other side. So this now is going to come to the inside and cover that seam that we had already done. All the way along, and that's how the collar is made. Over here, we turn this way, and it's going to look like that. So nice. Now I'm going to go rogue, and I know this is going to take me a lot longer. You know, the typical thing would be to edge stitch and sew this with a machine, but I don't want any stitching here on my collar for this dress. I want it super neat, and so I'm going to sew it by hand, which is totally valid. You just slip stitch this right along the edge. It's going to be invisible, and I'm going to be so much happier. Now this, you're supposed to open it up and you're supposed to put them wrong sides together, like this. But I'm actually going to leave this side with the line so I can see. I'm going to be sewing from this side. It was hard for me to mark here. I wouldn't have seen a thing, but on the black I can actually see. So these lines, no one's going to see them. They're going to be inside the dress. This is what my skin is going to be touching. It's super soft. And so that's how I'm going to put them. They're together, but the marks are looking up at me. What I'm going to do with this main waistband, the outer one from the main fabric, is just sew this short end and press it open. That's going to end up being my center back. This first 3/8 of an inch is the seam allowance. That's going to unite to the skirt or the bodice, doesn't matter. But I'm going to sew these 3/8 here on the top and on the bottom. This next gap is a channel, so that's open. Then I'm going to sew this little gap. Then I'm going to leave the next one open. Then I'm going to sew the next little gap. So basically I want this open, and that open, because those are going to be the channels for the elastic. And I'm only going to do this on the inner waistband because that's where I'm going to thread the elastic through. Here's the seam of the main waistband. I've pressed it open. It's a narrow zigzag. For the seam of this one, I actually put it so it ends up like with the lines that I can see them here. So I put my lines together like this and sewed it here where there were no lines. So my references here were the pins, and you can see I've got that sewn, gap, sewn, gap, sewn, gap, sewn. So the gaps that are open, this one, and this one are going to be the little channels. So now I'm going to put these two waistbands together. Check out my waistband. It's wrong sides together. This is the center back seam where I have little gaps to put the elastic, 3 little gaps right there. The rest is sewn partially. And I've got it wrong sides together. You can see the 2 seams are right on top of each other right there. And just to keep it nice and neat and not have this move or twist or anything, they are slightly slippery when they're together. I've done a row of hand basting here and there. They're not a reference to distance, nothing. It's just to keep the layers of fabric together. And now I'm going to go from this side where I can see my lines and I'm going to sew. It's going to be a really long seam on the round and then another one and over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Can I say the word over a little bit more? So this can take a while. It's pretty relaxing, mindless. Just keep following the lines and do all of these little channels. That tracing paper disappears with heat, so the marks are gone. And this is how that looks like. So now I'm ready to work with it. All the channels are done. I've got my openings there. I'm actually going to sew the bodice here, and then I'm going to sew the skirt, and then at the very end I'm going to thread the elastic. I think it's going to be easier like that for me. I'm actually sewing the skirt to the waistband first, so you can see my skirt wrong sides up, and I've got my waistband tucked inside. They match 1 to 1, and now I'm going to show you at the sewing machine how I'm going to unite these. You know, you can invert the order of events here. Whether you sew the skirt to the waistband or the bodice to the waistband first doesn't really matter. So I want to be able to see that first seam that I've already done when I was sewing all these channels in the beginning. And my skirt is under there. I'm going to be sewing right on top of that seam because I don't want that seam visible when I wear my dress. So that little stitch there is going to be my guide, and I'm going to be sewing all the way around, just uniting the bottom of the waistband with the top of the skirt. Narrow zigzag as always, just sewing straight onto that seam I had already done in the beginning. Now, whether you sew the bodice to the waistband or the skirt to the waistband and then the bodice, whatever order of events doesn't really matter. I don't really mind. Okay, so I've turned the skirt wrong sides out. This is the back. That's where the center back seam of the waistband is and my extra center back seam of the skirt. My bodice stays right sides out. This is the neckline here, and I'm just going to slide this bodice in here, match everything up, and sew it on the round in the exact same way you saw me sew this layer. Now I'm putting the elastic through. I've just put it through the middle channel. I'm going to put elastic through there. That one's going to be free. That one's going to have elastic. That one's going to be free. That one's going to have elastic. Now remember, there's a narrower waistband where you're going to have 3 channels and they're all going to have elastic. You're not going to have this situation here. So I've just put it through, come out the other side. Over here, I overlapped it by a little bit and I hand sewed it. It's just so much easier. And now I can just let it hang in there. And then I'm going to do the other one. And then these little gaps, I'm just going to slip stitch them closed and no one's going to know they're there. I was able to regulate the length I wanted when I made my test garment, so I cut 3. I'm very happy with how the dress turned out. I think it's so pretty. It's so amazing. I wish I would have had 3 more of me so I could have made 2 or 3 of these. I'm just running really short on time. I'm running out of days. I'm running out of hours before my big trip, and I was only able to make 1 version. But just know that I would have made more. I would have made a summer version, and I probably would have made another winter version to take with me. But I'm glad I have this one to take along and enjoy over there in the UK and other places I visit. I'm so excited for that. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll see you back here next week over at Lifting Pins and Needles. Bye.